welcome to Morbid Movies, the podcast where we discuss movies that appeal to the strange and unusual. I'm your host, Mary, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts who are probably not clones, Dom and Jim.
Yo!
Hey, what's up, everyone?
I got in the way again. Right.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Hey guys, it's Dom. How you doing? Welcome to Morbid Movies. What are we doing today, Mary?
All right, today we are going to be talking about the 2009 film Moon, starring Sam Rockwell, and pretty much just Sam Rockwell.
Yes, pretty much just Sam Rockwell. Absolutely fantastic showing from Sam as well. One of Hollywood's most underrated actors, in my view. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Again, one of the better picks on the podcast. I know I am in charge of all the terrible ones, but this is really enjoyable. Yeah, I loved it. I love the location. I love the aesthetic of it. The music, of course, actually by one of my favorite musicians too, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, some interesting facts here, Mary. The son of David Bowie, I didn't actually, of course I recognized it when I saw the name, but I didn't think about it, didn't make the connection at all. I'd seen it years and years and years ago. Duncan Jones, obviously more famous arguably before this film for being the son of David Bowie. Yeah, but a really, really great film, shot in 33 days, budget of 5 million, box office of 9. So obviously you do so much work in terms of the research for this film and the facts. I do want to kind of give the floor to you, Mary, to start us off with some of your favorites, and I'll also pick on a couple. So what are your key facts, from your research that you want to bring to us today? Because again, some really interesting budgetary facts I thought were worth highlighting, but I'll let you take over and then we'll talk from there. Could you give us some of your favorite facts, please, Mary?
Sure. Right. So, yeah, like you mentioned, this is a fairly low budget film. And I actually like that because I honestly believe that a lot of times a bigger budget can actually be detrimental to a film because I think that you have to get more creative. And like one of the things that I saw when they were talking about this is originally they wanted to use computers to create special effects, and they found out that would cost 500,000. So they went back and asked model makers, what would it cost to use models instead? And that came out to 47,000. So they ended up going with mostly practical effects and just some touch ups after the fact, which I love because, I love practical effects. They're like my favorite thing in the world. So I think it's nice because it adds a lot to the longevity of this film. Because now a lot of films from 2009, it's not as bad as say late 90s CGI, but you can see that it's dated. So using mostly practical effects does make it more immersive, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, you've got a unique perspective on this as somebody that's worked in film and media in the past as well. Your thoughts on the aesthetic here, because again, I also enjoy practical effects, and I thought it was all very well done. But I want to get because you mentioned off record that you'd seen it a couple of times. So what was it like for you going back to this?
I first saw it, I think, back in like 2012 or so. So, I mean, it's been a while. I think it still looks incredible. It's still a very good looking movie. I think one of the things that also helps with the budget on this, besides practical effects, is that this is almost like there's a term for television episodes that take place in one location to save money called bottle episodes. This is almost like a bottle movie in that it just takes place in a very small space station. There's just a couple of sets and they go outside a few times, but that's maybe like 3 scenes. So, I mean, the fact that they don't have a lot of variety of the sets, and which makes sense for a small space station, I think helps save some money, but it also really helps feel it helps play into that claustrophobic nature of the movie. That Sam Rockwell's character is really kind of stuck there. He's lonely. He's been there for 3 years. He wants to get out, and because there's not much variety there, it really helps that feeling.
Yeah, I certainly think it creates the tension, and one of my favorite scenes is quite a silly scene in context, quite a minimal scene, which brings a little bit of comedy. But we'll touch on that in a minute when we do favorite scenes. To your points, this was actually shot during a writers' strike, which caused other productions at Shepperton Studios to shut down. The director said he got a number of top class effects people on the crew because of the lull. So an interesting sort of tidbit for any emerging filmmakers and creatives who watch our podcast that, I guess it's good to use the resources you've got when you've got them. Another example again is that to save further costs, Jones used several set pieces from the abandoned movie based on Red Dwarf, which was, of course, a cult BBC TV sci-fi comedy, which I know Mary will know. Not many people in the US do. It was a cult part of my childhood and so many others, but it included the sleeping quarters and the secret room as well. So very, very interesting there. Any thoughts on those kind of points about, again, using what you've got when you've got it? I know Jim sort of started the ball rolling there, but Mary, anything to add to that, and how, this quite successful film, quite, it's got a cult following from what I understand, really, really is a great example of keeping your costs down and using what you've got when you've got it, as we've said.
Yeah, I think that reusing pieces from other sets does also kind of it works in this sense. A lot of the goal with the design of the scenery in this film was to make it resemble a lot of the inspirational source material. So like you mentioned, there's pieces from Red Dwarf in there, and a lot of what they built to resemble like 2001: A Space Odyssey was a huge influence for this, as well as Outland and Silent Running and Alien. So um, I think it works, and it also helps because the set pieces in this are meant to be beat up and like lived in looking, since it is a mining base that's been in operation for, I think, at least 15 years, based on the timeline of the film. So things shouldn't look too new and shiny. So I think that works in its favor as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's probably one of my favorite, oddly, from the podcast and the episodes we've done, probably one of my favorites aesthetically. Like we've said, in terms of just the look of it and that lived-in nature of it, which you excellently highlight there, Mary. So thank you very much for your research on this. Interesting quote from Jones that I wanted to highlight before we moved on to favorite actor, favorite scene as well, and obviously any sort of extra bits that you guys want to add in. The quote from Jones about the sort of moon, which I thought was a little bit over the top. I mean, I feel like we know quite a bit about the moon. Maybe I don't know enough about the moon, but Jones said we wanted to create something which felt comfortable within the canon of those science fiction films from the sort of late 70s to early 80s. For me, the moon has this weird mythical nature to it. There is still a mystery. As a location, it bridges the gap between science fiction and science fact. We, humankind, have been there. It is something so close and so plausible, and yet at the same time we really don't know that much about it. There is, of course, lots of movies and TV shows set in space, set on the moon. So what do you think about that quote? Because again, I can totally see the point, and again, it does they do a great job of building this location in this film, arguably a lot better than a lot of the other films that we've perhaps alluded to. What are your thoughts on that? Is the moon still a mystery? Do you think in context in 2009 this quote works? Because I think it's an interesting quote to not necessarily challenge, but certainly bring up.
All right, so I think he has a good point because the moon is the only other place besides Earth that people have actually been to. So it is familiar in that sense. But we haven't really done a lot with the moon. People have landed there, they've taken some samples, but there hasn't been a lot of actual exploration. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a mystery of what could possibly be below the surface, what's going on with a lot of different, what's going on with the moon. We don't necessarily know.
But Mary, do you have any points on the moon? Is it the big mystery that Jones makes it out to be?
Well, I think to that point, it helps that this film is set on the far side of the moon, like because the side that we can see from Earth, like I've gone out, I have binoculars that are strong enough to look at the moon, and you can do that. But there's a whole other side that, because of how we're situated and how the moon orbits us, we don't get to see it normally. So I think that part of the moon is a little more mysterious, and like that's where when you see like weird conspiracy theories, like a lot of them involve the side that we can't easily see. So I think that is part of it, and a lot of it really is that mystique of there's only been a handful of human beings who have ever set down on the moon. Most of us will never get to go there and see it in person, more than likely. As I assume, even if space tourism is a thing, I'm not in the income bracket that's going to get to go. So I think that in that sense, there is still a certain amount of unknown to it.
Absolutely. And I think that's important that we have some mystery in this world, in the age that we can view everything, see everything at the touch of a button. So perhaps to that original point, the moon is still a mystery. And if you have any questions or comments on that, or you'd like to fight us, feel free to engage with us in the comments and we'll take you for a space fight or something of that nature. Before I ask Mary if there's anything you want to add, I do want to shout out one of the greatest composers of this generation, Clint Mansell, who Mary will probably know was also one of the founding members of the band Pop Will Eat Itself. Of course, industrial rock in the sort of 90s, and very kind of much in that sort of Nine Inch Nails vein, but with a bit more of pop and a little bit more comedy. But he obviously went on to become an incredible composer for films across the world, and very, very noted in Hollywood. So props to Clint Mansell for pulling together another wonderful soundtrack. Mary, before we round up and do favourite actor and favourite scene and finish up, do you have anything from the facts that we've missed that you'd like to address?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention is that I like that there's a lot of very small details, like Easter eggs, that are tucked throughout the film that kind of reference what's going on, like the alarm clock playing, I am the one and only, and each and the shirt that says like "Wake me up when it's quitting time," are a couple, but also like when they're watching when he's watching Bewitched on the station, and it's a scene that's discussing Darren, who famously that actor was replaced partway through the series, and most people didn't even particularly notice. I think there's just like a lot of interesting little details there that feed back into the main plot line for those who are looking for them.
Absolutely, and I do love a good few Easter eggs, and thank you for bringing those up. If anybody has any more facts and points, of course, do comment and let us know. Okay, so we're going to do favorite scene. I'm going to give the floor to you guys both first. Jim, can you give us your favorite actor and favorite scene together, please? And then we'll go straight to Mary.
I mean, with favorite actors, is there any other option besides Sam Rockwell?
I mean,
It's
that question was put in there for comedic effect, but yes, go for
oh,
it.
okay, all right. Well, I mean, I could choose between the Sam Rockwells, I guess. I think maybe the manic older, dying Sam Rockwell was a little bit more difficult to pull off from a creative perspective, from an acting perspective. But my favorite scene is my favorite scene is when Gertie helps Sam Rockwell's character figure out who he enters the password so that he can figure out what is going on. Like it's basically the final piece of the puzzle as to what's happening with previous iterations of him. And spoiler alert, he is a clone. Um, and the reason I find that interesting is number one, I mean, we kind of know what's happening to an extent, but the actual what is actually happening is horrific. But it's more along the lines of it's basically the turning point for Gertie because they play into his similarities with Hal a lot in this movie. And up until that point, you think he's working for the company, you think he's programmed to protect the company's interests and that he's going to be evil, but he actually breaks out of his programming cycle. And I think that there's a lot of similarities between Gertie and the clones, and then the clones being in kind of a midway point between Gertie and humanity. And there's that kind of question of can we break out of our pre-programmed cycles? And Gertie can, the clones can, and the movie seems to suggest that we can as well.
Absolutely, good, excellent point.
To build on what Jim was talking about, there is also towards the end of the movie that scene where Sam does tell Gertie, we are not programs, we are people, which I think does feed into that. And I think it's important that with Gertie, he's programmed first and foremost to help Sam and keep Sam safe, which is, I'm going to be honest, is I am involved in the like tech and security field, is exactly the kind of programming oversight that you would expect in a computer, because computers can be very literal in how they interpret instructions, which means that they don't always do things the way you expect them to, because they don't interpret it necessarily by reading between the lines. So when you say your job is to help Sam, that becomes help Sam solve the mystery of what is going on the space station. So I do like that. And in terms of like other favorite scenes, I really like the scene where the two Sam Bells are talking to each other after they've fought. And the older one who's mellowed out is telling the other one, like, is agreeing with him, like, yes, you do have an anger problem. You do need to work on that. I find it interesting. It's like he's having a conversation with himself in a way most of us never will. So I liked that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some very, very heavy stuff. And again, I alluded to my favorite. Really, really takes the edge off the more serious favorite scenes that you're alluding to. But again, I think it sort of adds to the intensity of the film in places. It's when clones dancing to Walking on Sunshine, kind of trying to break up the monotony of sort of doing tasks on the craft. And yeah, I thought it was really quite funny. He's dancing around, and it's sort of a rare moment in the film, which kind of again gives us a little bit of comedy that Sam Rockwell typically in film roles is known for, but this is a very, very serious, very, very philosophically challenging role for Sam. So I enjoyed the comedy in that. Anything else to add then, guys, before we finish up, before we could talk about our next film and next month?
I guess the only thing I would say is that I honestly kind of appreciate that this is a hard science fiction film that doesn't lean into being an action film, because I feel like that has become incredibly rare. I watch a lot of sci-fi, and I don't dislike action sci-fi, but I feel like in the 80s and 90s that started to be the way that the genre moved, is action first with sci-fi elements. So it's just nice to see something that leans more into the actual hard science fiction without needing to have a lot of action as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. The more kind of challenging emotional scenes, of course. There's, that the other one that I want to mention is that sort of heart-wrenching scene where he just is just crying, I want to go home, and he's realized the situation, the gravity of the situation. There's some really emotional points in this film that I would encourage, without us trying to spoil too much for you. This is definitely one that I would encourage of all the films that we've covered. I think if you want to see Sam Rockwell on an absolutely defining role, a great aesthetic, a great look, and like I say, soundtrack, everything. I really do encourage anybody watching this to go and watch that and see. Let us know what your favorite scene is. Let us know which of the Sam Rockwell Sam Rockwells you prefer in this film, because again, we really do appreciate your conversation and your time and your interaction with what we do. But yeah, brilliant film. Fantastic pick, and I'm really, really glad we got to do this one. So yeah, tell us what we're doing next.
All right, so our next film, which presumably will be the episode will be sometime in June, we're going to be doing your pick, which is Late Night with the Devil. So I haven't seen that one yet, so this should be fun for me.
Indeed. This film means quite a lot to me. It was the first, just for a little bit of trivia, it was the first film where we did an interview with the main actor, which then launched our film and TV platform on Soundsphere, and then we went on to cheap plug, go and interview the likes of Ewan McGregor, etc., etc. Done Kevin Smith. We've done all off the back of a press interview around this film with the wonderful David Dasmalchian, who's a big fan of Nine Inch Nails and Failure. Just dropping a quick plug in there for all of my Soundsphere related work, because why not? So if anybody's interested, go and check that out. And yeah, come back to see us cover Late Night with the Devil, starring David Dasmalchian, in June. All right, Jim, it's your time to shine. What do we say when we finish up the podcast? And yeah, guys, see you guys soon. Take it easy.
Keep it spooky.
Yeah. All right, guys. See you next time.